August 6th, 1930, Hell's Kitchen, New York City. At 9:15 p.m., 41-year-old State Supreme Court Justice Joseph Force Crater steps out of a chop house on West 45th Street.
He's been dining with a couple of friends and says that he's running late to a Broadway show, so he leaves the restaurant, hops into a cab, heads west.
From that moment, he's never seen or heard from again.
Now, people go missing all the time, but when it's Judge Crater, it's a big deal. Because at this point, Joe Crater has just hit the political prime time, as it were. He's a big up-and-comer who was recently appointed to the New York State Supreme Court by then Governor of New York State, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That appointment is only for the rest of a vacated term, and by the time of his disappearance, Crater is actually gearing up for an election of his own. If he wins re-election in November, the sky's the limit.
It's an election that's crucial for Judge Crater and for FDR.
And this is great because the opportunity to ride the coattails of FDR meant that you would have unlimited potential. A lot of people believe that once FDR is president, Crater will be a nominee to the United States Supreme Court.
He's kind of a man about town in New York. He knows all the cops, he knows all the politicians, he knows the Broadway producers, the dancers.
He is a widely known celebrity in the city, and at the time, if you're a New York celebrity, you're a nationwide celebrity.
The disappearance of Crater is huge. It's probably the equivalent of a Jimmy Hoffa or even Amelia Earhart.
Now, Crater's wife, Stella, is going through his Rolodex and calling up every political bigwig that she can get her hands on to find out if any of them know what happened to him. It's even possible that FDR might have gotten a call.
But Stella's pleas aren't taken seriously at first.
Crater is kind of a ladies' man, and it's not uncommon for him to sometimes be gone for several days at a time with other women.
He's nicknamed Good Time Joe. He's gone off on benders and disappeared for a while in the past where they've had to cover for him before.
It was an open secret that he had a few women on the side.
On August 2nd, Crater and his wife Stella go to their vacation home in Maine to stay there till the 25th until court comes back in session.
But a day later, on August 3rd, Crater receives a phone call and then tells his wife Stella that he has to head back to, quote, straighten some fellows out. Now, she assumes it's just some business or a legal issue, but he promises to be back by her birthday on August 9th.
Stella's birthday comes and goes on the 9th, and Crater's a no-show. He's nowhere to be found, and she's a little worried because she's not used to her husband breaking personal promises to her.
And Stella's calling around to all these powerful men to try to figure out what happened to her husband, and powerful men will do what powerful men normally do. They're gonna cover up for their friend. Now, his friends tell her, don't worry about him. I'm sure he's fine. He's probably just super busy with work or some other commitments. They honestly don't really know where he is, but they're just assuming that he's off with one of his girlfriends. And they would gladly cover for him because they would assume that he would do the same for them when they're cheating on their wives.
The upcoming election is also a factor.
Now, Crater's friends are all involved in politics in one way or another, so they're either working on their own campaigns or they're hoping that Crater wins his election in 3 months' time so that they can just ride his coattails. Crater's a key part of the ticket that the Democrats hope will get FDR reelected as governor, as long as there are no scandals.
And it's apparent if he wins there, he will be a shoo-in for the nomination for the presidency of the United States. In 1932, any Democrat's going to beat Herbert Hoover.
During Judge Crater's time in New York politics, the Democrats worked closely with an organization that's known as Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall dominates both New York City and state politics for more than a century. Its name becomes synonymous with corruption under infamous leaders like Boss Tweed.
They do plenty of good things for the people of New York, but ultimately, they are a corrupt organization. But if you're a Democrat, working with Tammany is how you win elections.
By the late 1920s, Tammany has woven its way into every level of New York politics. And in 1929, Judge Crater becomes president of a key Tammany branch, the Cayuga Club.
A lot of New York voters are tired of the blatant corruption, so the 1930 elections are a pivotal point. For once, the Republicans have a good shot of winning a number of top seats from the Democrats, especially the one for governor.
FDR's main rival is Republican prosecutor Charles Tuttle. Tuttle is on a crusade to expose judicial corruption.
Prior to Crater's disappearance, his whole office of attorneys and investigators are looking into evidence of judicial corruption rumored to be running rampant among Tammany Hall's main players. And if Tuttle can make the case, it might bring down the Democrats and FDR with them. Judge Crater is potentially a key witness.
When Tuttle looks into the Cayuga Club, he learns something interesting.
Tuttle finds evidence that the Cayuga Club is actually selling government jobs. If you're connected to Tammany Hall, they can help you get appointed or elected to a political position. In return, you pay them 1 year's salary. Tuttle has proof of one of these payments, a $10,000 bribe that was paid to Tammany Hall boss Martin Healy by attorney George Ewald for his position as a city magistrate.
Tuttle's evidence certainly implicates Judge Crater, too. As president of the Cayuga Club, Crater has to be aware of what's going on. I mean, he even serves as master of ceremonies at George Ewald's celebration dinner when he becomes magistrate.
The corruption might go even further.
There is also circumstantial evidence that Judge Crater may have purchased his own position. When Crater is appointed to the New York Supreme Court, it is one of the highest paid positions in the state. He is paid a salary of $22,000. It's the same as the governor's and a lot less work.
It's the most coveted seat in New York politics, and it speaks to the ability of Joe Crater to manipulate and maneuver himself into that position. Tuttle wants to know how he got this job.
1 month after his appointment, in May of 1930, Crater withdraws $22,000 from various bank accounts.
Which is exactly 1 year's salary. Tuttle has no direct proof that this money went to pay Tammany Hall, but while he's out publicly campaigning against the Democrats, he strongly suggests that it did. And this scandal could have even gotten Judge Crater killed.
Tuttle's belief is that Crater is at the heart of the Tammany Hall kickback scheme. And when Tuttle's investigation closes in on Crater, and they're going to call Crater as a witness, Tammany Hall bigwigs silence him so he cannot testify.
How high does this go? Is FDR aware? Is FDR involved? Obviously, this could go very bad for the Democrats if some massive trial of the century is opened.
Although Crater's disappearance is a thorny issue for Tammany Hall, it's far better that he goes this way than testifies against them.
Tuttle can't prove this theory, but Crater's own wife offers some support.
There's a big mystery about who calls Crater on August 3rd, which causes him to travel back to New York City. At the time, his wife Stella does not reveal anything useful. But in 1937, Stella tells a magazine his purpose of the visit was to advise Tammany boss Martin Healy about the Tuttle investigation.
Stella is sure that the Tammany case is behind her husband's disappearance.
She's not the only one. In 1954, an acquaintance of Crater's, Henry Krause, makes an extraordinary claim.
Krause calls an old detective friend of his and says that he has something he wants to get off his chest before he dies. He thinks he knows what happened to Judge Crater.
Back in the 30s, Krause had a vacation home which he frequently let Crater use for parties. Many of those parties were co-hosted by Martin Healy. Krause claimed that in early 1930, the two men buried $90,000 in the backyard.
But in mid-August, after Crater's disappearance, Krause visits his vacation home to find the place in shambles. There are broken glasses strewn about, there are liquor bottles everywhere, and when he walks into the kitchen, he says, quote, "There's nothing there but blood." And the box in the backyard has been dug up and taken.
A week later, Martin Healy sets up a meeting with Krause.
Healy warns him that there might be some trouble coming. He tells Krause that he needs to deny knowing Crater, and that he shouldn't deny that they were ever at his house.
Krause goes along with his demand, and when the detective starts peppering him with questions, Krause just keeps repeating that Crater is dead, and he thinks that he is buried at the house.
The police were able to verify part of Krause's story. Their investigation showed that Crater had written at least 2 checks to Krause, and Krause did indeed have a Westchester home.
Krause's 1954 revelations revive public interest in the case. Life magazine funds an excavation of the home's backyard.
Unfortunately, they don't find Crater's remains. And that's about as far as authorities can take things. Some evidence may still bear out that this theory is correct, but until that evidence surfaces, it's impossible to prove.